Are you ready for some Digby?
Yes. The somewhat comforting tunes of the Digby theme song. Things can get bleak, but we will always have this song and our next guest to, I don't know, maybe cheer us up? I want to welcome back to the program Heather Parton, writer from Salon.com, and also Digby from the Uber blog Hullabaloo. Hello, Digby. Last time we spoke was just hours before the pre-Trump administration Part 2 era.
Yep. That was pretty awful. We all knew at that moment when we were talking that it didn't look good, but we still were holding out some hope. And, you know, it didn't take long for all that to come crashing down. I'm still feeling a little numb over all that, but here we are.
Yeah. I mean, let's just, before we get into sort of some of the specifics, I mean, let's talk about this numbness. There is I have a different feeling than I did last time. I mean, I'm not shocked. Going into this, from my perspective, it was, 50-50 and it could go either way. And certainly we had learned the lesson from 2016.
I had not. I had really thought Harris was going to win. So it was a bit of a...
I did too.
It was a reverse for me. I thought Hillary was a lot weaker in 2016. And I think my brain couldn't accept that he ran such a bad campaign and it got racist, misogynistic, no discipline, no message, and it got rewarded.
Yeah. I mean, I liken it back a little bit to Bush 2004's win, but I was more shocked about that one in 2004. I think I've been involved in having my preferred candidate lose enough now that and in ways that I didn't anticipate. But what else? I mean, are you feeling about this, Heather?
Well, I mean, I'm with Emma, and this time I did think that I just assumed that after having seen what he was capable of, that people would not vote for him again. They beat him in 2020, and I saw the polls, and I don't think I was fooling myself too much, but I did think that the Democrats would eke out a victory in this polarized world, that it would just, it sort of had to go that way. So I wasn't shocked, but I was definitely extremely disappointed. And what I'm feeling now is less about him. I already know what he is, and I'm very familiar with what he's planning to do and what he's capable of, because I've been writing about him nonstop for 8 years. I feel like my brain is mush from it. But it's the American people. It's that, I'm really concerned about what has happened to, or been revealed, perhaps. Perhaps nothing's happened. Perhaps all that has happened is that Trump has revealed this strain in American society that I find very disturbing, that anybody would vote for that person who did that. And so, there's the MAGA cult. I was aware of that, but, that enough people who were not members of the MAGA cult, or people who were out there, not paying attention and just in the last minute came up and took a flyer, I guess, on Donald Trump. That is very disturbing to me, and it just shows a weakness in our society that I think I wasn't completely aware of. So it's a little depressing, to be honest with you. That's how I feel about it. So carrying on, doing what we have to do. I mean, there's no giving up. What are you going to do? I can't go anywhere, so I'm here. And so carrying on. But I feel less. In 2016, I think I felt personally hurt, to be honest, and very emotional. And I don't feel that way this time. I'm just, like I said, numb and disappointed in the American people, which is a terrible place to be. I hate feeling like that. I mean, that's not a good feeling.
I think that what is hurtful for me about this one, I guess, I kind of feel the reverse with Heather in terms of just because of course, in 2016, the misogyny and how he treated Hillary Clinton was at the forefront. But this felt like a different beast because we have J.D. Vance and the cat ladies thing that kicks things off when he's selected. Then Kamala Harris steps in for Biden, and immediately the go-to is, well, she's a slut, and she slept her way to the top. And then with abortion rights also being on the ballot, and in 2016, Trump was running on, she's corrupt, these trade deals are bad for you. These are the kinds of things where, like, I can see why that resonated. But with women's health care on the ballot, and with Harris doing what Clinton didn't really do, which was blanketing the swing states, the ground game was better. Not as strong of a message or a contrast. We can get into that. But, like, the fundamentals that Hillary failed on, she did better on that. And then it was a worse result in many ways. And so that's the kind of thing where it's depressing. And I agree with you. What does it say about the public that this appealed to them? And now that Trump's appointing all these accused rapists to his cabinet, what does it say about this political movement and what it means for half this population and more?
I think we can tell what it says, and it's not good. I mean, the fact that abortion rights didn't manage to motivate many of the voters who had come out for Joe Biden in 2020, I am really, devastated by that was not. Now, granted, some of those are in blue states where people felt safe and, didn't feel like, I guess they had to, had to bother. But nonetheless, just even to make a statement and come out and vote for women's rights, again, deeply disappointed and deeply concerned. And I really feel like we're going backwards. I really do. The appointment of these rapists, and just sexual assault perpetrators across the board, even including at least one of the women, Linda McMahon, and her being involved in all this stuff. I mean, it's stunning that they're doubling down on that. But we should have seen it. We saw the Republican convention. They were, yep. It's a man's world, right? I mean, they weren't making any bones about this. So here we are. And as a woman, it's pretty devastating. I can't even imagine for you, Em. I mean, I'm older, so it's like, I've been going through this for a while. But I mean, if I were your age, I'd be pretty,
Right. Well, I mean, I asked Sam, how is Mila reacting to it too? Because I think, I was 14 when Obama first got elected, and that was this was why I cared about politics, was him running on I cared about the Iraq War really early on, right? That was my introduction into this kind of thing. And I remember that feeling and like crying tears of joy, seeing him win and get inaugurated. I remember exactly where I was. And this was the first time I'd voted in the general. Obama 2012, voting for him was a little more disappointing because of the failures of that administration. But I did think we had an opportunity to kill Trumpism this time around. And I thought that white women would care about abortion enough to vote for Harris. Like, I really thought that was and I think I'm projecting my own mind onto them because at the end of the day, he won white women. It turns out their whiteness mattered more than the rights of other women.
I was not disappointed in the American public simply because I think I was already there for a long time. I mean, I don't, it's 50% of the population. He only got about under 2 million votes, was more than he got last time. Largely, it was about Harris underperforming, and part of that could be also like a lack of understanding to people that like, if you don't vote, you're making it possible for this guy who lost, with his numbers in 2024, he would have lost to Joe Biden's numbers in 2020, and largely. And I mean, at least in terms of like the popular vote. I mean, it's a little bit more nuanced in terms of swing states. And I remember thinking, or saying, if I'm from a foreign country and I'm looking at the U.S. in terms of being a stable country, and they go from Obama to Trump, why wouldn't I think that they can go from, they can go back to Obama and then back to Trump? I wasn't talking specifically about Obama, and I probably wasn't talking specifically about Trump, although that's what happened. Like, this is an unstable country.
Yeah.
And we have the dynamic of these politics in some ways has not changed. It's just like, where has the tipping point been? And in some ways, like, Thomas Piketty makes that argument that the era of the Great Compression in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, where wealth inequality, shrunk, was the anomaly. And that, as we get to wealth inequality growing, that's sort of more like returning to the mean. And in some ways, it could be with our politics as well. I mean, the era where I guess I am more worried about where we go from here, because it's a good way of segueing into this conversation, because as I think bumbling and inept and unthoughtful as Donald Trump is, the Republican movement has had the opportunity to prepare for this in a way that we've never seen before, right? Like, we've never seen, even when Bush wins George W. Bush, who I think was one of the worst presidents we've had, and Reagan the same way.
Great.
They don't have time to recalibrate, and between those two administrations. And this is a very unique dynamic where all of these people who worked in Trump 1 could go into the think tanks, and then come up with their ideas and immediately implement them. You've written about Russ Vought and the former budget OMB head in Trump, who then basically went on and more or less marshaled Project 2025. And he's going to be back in. And he's going to be running this stuff. And that's what really scares me. But before we get to that, let's talk about this Gaetz nomination, because I was very surprised that he dropped out, to be honest. What was your sense of this?
I honestly didn't know. I was kind of I was just waiting to see how this is unfolding. I had an inkling that something was going on that we weren't seeing when the Senate, with a secret ballot, voted for John Thune over Rick Scott. And I thought to myself, because Rick Scott, Trump didn't endorse in that. But all of his minions came out and endorsed Rick Scott. Musk did, RFK Jr., Ramaswamy, they came out and endorsed Rick Scott. So I thought, okay, that's where Mar-a-Lago is right now. That's where the MAGA feeling is. They wanted Rick Scott. And Rick Scott only got 13 votes. And I thought to myself when that happened, I'm going, oh, that's interesting. I am surprised, because the juggernaut that is the Donald Trump, who just won this alleged landslide, I would have thought they would have just gone along with him on that if he's got that much power. But it was a secret ballot. And I'm going, okay, so there's some rumblings underneath here where nobody's going to have to take responsibility for that. On that same day is the day that Trump named Gaetz. And so I went, oh, okay, let's just see how this plays out. And as it turns out, I just wrote about this morning for Salon. As it turns out, what ended up happening is that Trump threw out that trial balloon about the recess appointments. And this is before the senators voted for Thune. He threw out there, anybody who wants to be the leader has to agree to do recess appointments. We have to get this done immediately, exclamation point. And John Thune agreed to do that. He didn't say that he would do it. He said that has to be on the table. It has to be available or whatever. It was a bit of a hedge, but he did agree to it. So it just occurred to me that maybe there was more going on underneath the surface, because one of the things that you have to know about senators over Congress people is they all look in the mirror in the morning and see a president. They think that right. These people, you're an ego if you're in the Senate, one way or the other. That these are not people who are generally used to being treated like servants of the president, and yet that's exactly how they were being seen, and they were being told, you either do what I say or I'm going to adjourn you. I've got Mike Johnson over here, and he's going to help me do it, which I won't go into the process. You've probably talked about it. The process of recess appointments
Yep.
would have required there to be a disagreement and blah, blah, blah. So he's saying, I'm going to Mike Johnson and I are going to get together and we're just going to ice you people out if you don't do what I tell you to do. So that occurred to me that him naming Gaetz was a real shot across the bow to these senators because they hate him. Everybody hates that guy. He was the most unpopular person in the entire Capitol. And for him to name him right when he did, the first one out of the gate, saying this is the Gaetz, saying this is who I'm going to do, it occurred to me that there might be a little tiny bit of pushback from the Republicans. I didn't know if it would happen. I think it did happen. What went on this week was that they sent J.D. Vance with Gaetz down to the Capitol. He met with the senators, and the senators apparently said there were enough of them who said we're a hard no. We're not voting for this guy. And the House, apparently there was rumblings here. I got this from Philip Bump at the Washington Post. The House said there were enough Republicans in the House that said, in this narrow majority that they have there, we're not going along with this. We're not going to let you adjourn the House and do this gambit of doing recess appointments. All of this was on the QT. Nobody was out there going on Fox and saying, I won't go along with it. They were all pretending like Donald Trump has a right to get his, whatever. But somewhere underneath all of this, there was a slight resistance among the congressional Republicans to Trump just absolutely, bringing the hammer down and saying, I get my way. As it turns out yesterday, apparently, they had this CNN story about Gaetz that they were going to drop this second bombshell that he had actually been with this 17-year-old more than once in some kind of group sex situation. And the drama that we heard about was that they told him, and then they said, we're going to drop this story at 12:30, and at 12:24, Gaetz sent out a statement saying he was withdrawing. What really happened in there, according to Mark Caputo, who's down in Mar-a-Lago, writes for the Bulwark, he said that's not how it went down. What happened was Donald Trump called him and said, you don't have the votes. And there's no way you're going to get the votes. And he left it up to Gaetz to say what to do. But of course, Gaetz got the message really clearly that Trump wasn't going to fight for him, and he withdrew. And what that says is, that recess appointment thing, they may use it down the road if there's something that Trump really, but it's not the threat, I don't think, that Trump thought it was going to be. And he went ahead and, Gaetz, he let Gaetz go. He has Bondi. What's the difference, really? It's not like, he's fine with his revenge, tour that he's going to do. But, and Trump has no loyalty to anybody. He doesn't care. On a personal level, he could care less about Matt Gaetz. But what it did say to me was that it showed that this juggernaut, this incredible, powerful, all-powerful dictator that we had 2 weeks ago, Trump just showed some weakness. And he showed the same kind of weakness that he always shows, which is that he's inept. He is dysfunctional. He's chaotic. He doesn't know what he's doing. And to be honest with you, I think that may be the only real guardrail that we have is Trump's own ineptitude.
I have to say, though, I think that in some respects, Gaetz is sui generis in this way, in that there was and I hadn't heard that part about the House, and it really does explain everything. That's really fascinating, because the Senate, I think he would have been okay with the Senate saying, we're not going to vote for this guy. And I think Trump had completely outlined the whole plan. We had talked about it, 3 or 4 days ago, maybe at the beginning of this week, which was, the House adjourns. The Senate says they're not going to. The president falls to Article 3, Section 2, or I think it is, and then says, okay, I'll resolve this. You're both on recess. Now, the Senate could come back, theoretically, not within a 10-day window and prevent Trump from appointing, but they would have been in a position where they don't have to do anything, so it's easier for them to let it slide. But Johnson does have this incredibly thin margin. And we should say Gaetz has now decided he's not coming back to Congress. So and not only is it an incredibly thin margin, like it's either going to be, 4 or 5 votes, 6 votes, 7 votes, we'll see. But 3 are absent, for the next couple of months. So right now he has, right when it comes time to do that vacancy on January 6th, or whenever it is that they take office.
The 20th is the inauguration, right?
The inauguration is the 20th. But
it's the 3rd. It's January 3rd.
January 3rd is when
gotcha.
House would come in. In that one, as narrow as the margin is now, it's going to be 1 or 2 votes. And remember, 2 of those people voted against impeachment. Voted for impeachment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's razor thin. And the hatred of Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
That's why Mike Johnson's standing there, is because of Matt Gaetz. And as much as like Steve Scalise is going in and there's an internal conflict where he's getting rid of some of the McCarthy people in leadership positions in the House, they still exist. They still have a vote. And the last thing they're going to do is allow for a recess appointment process that appoints Gaetz. I think they'll do it for everybody else. I don't think they care about child rape, or I don't think they care about this story of Pete Hegseth. Maybe RFK, they're a little bit nervous about some things and they don't want him to actually wait, we thought you were just going to ban vaccines. We didn't realize you wanted to also ban, other industrial products. But I think that's the real key, that Matt Gaetz was not just odious, but specifically this was a clash of vengeance between 2 different factions. One that is still sort of is the rump, and they are more hidden, but 2 or 3 votes and the whole recess appointment process falls apart, because he's going to have to do all of them in that recess. You can't do one recess and then another and then another. He's going to probably put 2 or 3 people through in that recess. I still think that's going to happen.
Well, you may very well be right. You make a good case that Gaetz really was sui generis, and that the rest of them will float through. But I do think, what you're getting the sense is that, Pete Hegseth, for one thing, what he is, when people are actually seeing what this guy is, and the rapist part is just part of it. He's completely unqualified for the job. He also has a view of the military that is really disgusting. Emma, this guy, when we want to talk about misogynist, he is right up there with Trump for being just a sheer, unadulterated misogynist. I think that I read yesterday, and I can't remember where I read it, that senators have been getting calls from, generals and former generals and people like that who are deeply concerned about Hegseth's approach to, quote, reforming the military, that it's going to be disruptive on a level that people are not necessarily anticipating.
That internal, complaint by somebody that served with him about his tattoos that have links to white supremacy. Right. That was somebody that was with him that filed a complaint within the military. I don't know. I'm a little bit more with you, Heather. I don't know how, because Trump will abandon these folks if he needs to, right?
They can find somebody else he can find other people to do his dirty work. At some point, yes, he wants to defy everybody and he wants to, stage a big show. And I think that's a big part of why he's choosing these people. They literally come out of television, which is why he's choosing them. But these senators and House members too, they have constituents that Trump. One of the things we have to really wrap our minds around with Trump's never going to run again. He has no need ever again to care about what voters think of him. He can make it up in his own head. He doesn't care. He never did care about his approval rating. He will do what he wants. He will reward people he chooses to reward. And it has no bearing on whether or not he owes them anything. for case in point, the anti-abortion movement now they are pushing very hard. They wanted to get that guy that wrote the passage in 2025. I can't think of his name. It's Severino or something like that. And they wanted him in, and the Trump people said, no, we can't have him. He's too extreme. And the anti-abortion folks are all upset. They're not going to, I mean, I'm not saying they're not going to get anything out of him on this, but I don't think that they're going to get the big push that they were hoping for. And I think that's what you're going to see. Trump doesn't care about anything but Trump. We know that. And he has two things that he cares about specifically doing in this term. One is money. Anything that has to do with him personally making money, obviously, and that can be a wide range of stuff, right? I mean, anything from Bitcoin to, whatever, tariffs or whatever he thinks is going to make him money. He doesn't care about the country. He doesn't care about the economy. He cares about money. That's not necessarily the same thing when it comes to him. And the other thing he cares about is revenge. He wants to take vengeance on anybody who he feels wronged him, and that's a big group of people. And specifically, it's the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and the intelligence community. And I think now we're looking with him with the RFK thing. He wants to set RFK loose on all those pointy-headed scientists who made him look stupid during COVID. So he wants to set that up, and there are plenty of people he can put into those jobs. It doesn't have to be these particular people, but he wants to do it. He was feeling drunk with power, I think, and kind of buying his own hype and putting these people in. Now, but these people in the Congress, in the House and in the Senate, they have to run again. They're not like Trump. They actually do have to run for office, many of them in 2 years. And so they're getting some countervailing pressure, I think, from others, like the military, for instance. When it comes to Republican politics, you cannot underestimate the power of the military and the military-industrial complex on those people. And I think there's going to, and so I'm with Emma a little bit. I don't know, Sam. It's entirely possible that he gets all these people through on a recess. That is totally within the realm of possibility. But maybe there's some air there. I don't know.
Maybe, but let's play this clip. This is from Thursday, just probably moments before Gaetz drops out. And this is ABC's Selena Wang. And this is, and again, like, I mean, I don't, well, we'll get back to this, but I'm sort of like agnostic on the whole, if he gets his picks or not. Like, I think it's helpful insofar as like, it's good to see people not acquiesce on some level, but I think it's Pyrrhic. I don't think it's real.
Oh,
and
it is. It's totally
you remember, like, when, it was supposed to be Harriet Miers, and the conservatives shot her down, ostensibly because she was, and we got Alito. And I'm a little worried that that's the dynamic at play. But here is ABC News reports yesterday, which shows both, like, it's not, you mentioned these Congress people and senators have a constituency, and Trump doesn't care about that, but there is still a Republican apparatus. Here we go.
Well, Trump has been working the phones. He's been upping the pressure on Senate Republicans, even calling some of them directly. This is as J.D. Vance is also making the pitch. He was up on Capitol Hill with Matt Gaetz yesterday, meeting with some of those Senate Republicans. And we're told by a Trump official that those meetings were productive. But we're also told that behind the scenes, the Trump team has been playing hardball, and they've been giving an ominous warning to any Senate Republicans who might oppose his nominees. One Trump advisor telling our John Carl that the message is, quote, if you are on the wrong side of the vote, you're buying yourself a primary. That is all. And there's a guy named Elon Musk who is going to finance it. The Trump advisor added the president gets to decide his cabinet, no one else. This comes out.
So, I mean, obviously it shows we're in an era now where, we've been talking about oligarchy for 10, 15 years. It has fully arrived, right? Like, I mean, Elon Musk basically saying, I have unlimited funds. I will bankroll every primary against you guys. And notice when that report came down, it was nominees, not necessarily Gaetz. And so there is this threat. on one hand, Trump is talking to Susie Wiles, who is his chief of staff, who's saying, hey, it's not worth expending your capital on Matt Gaetz, which is a pretty easy, like there's problems not just in the Senate, but there's problems in the House. And he could take down your entire your entire recess appointment strategy. If there's 2 or 3 people that need to go through that process, Gaetz could pull that all down because there's such unique animosity towards Gaetz himself. And so, she's saying that to him, be practical, it's going to cost you. But then he's on the phone with Steve Bannon, or he's on the phone with, whomever it is, saying, you're showing weakness and you can't do this twice. You can get away with it once because Gaetz was unique, but you're showing weakness. You got to go forward. And he's got Elon Musk and he's got these others. I mean, he
has Elon for now. That's my one caveat.
That's true. But Elon also has got to be thinking, wait a second, how much do I need Trump at one point?
Right.
I mean, I've got all the money in the world.
Does that last until bankrolling primary challenges against specific members of Congress or senators who oppose Trump's nominees? I have deep skepticism, and I would imagine Republicans in Congress do, that this relationship continues in the way that it has for right now. But that's my one caveat.
Probably true. But this guy's going around thinking like, I made it possible for Donald Trump to win. And whether he's right or not, someone with that type of hubris and ego doesn't need much convincing. He's got all the money in the world. And I worry about Bondi, frankly. I mean,
me too.
She is corrupt, was involved in fraud, stopped investigating Trump University when she got money from him. Yep. This is maybe late payback. She was famous for basically undermining 2 of the best prosecutors regarding the financial fraud in the run up to 2008. Yep. David Dane has written extensively on this. I mean, she's been attorney general in Florida. She knows what she's doing, in other words, whereas Gaetz, I don't think, had any clue. But, it's hard to know who could do more damage there. As far as the military, I worry about, Pete Hegseth coming in, firing all the generals, I guess, and then, getting generals who are going to turn the military on, in U.S. operations. But on the other hand, I'm also I don't mind it if he, completely undermines the support structure for the military we have. I don't know that he would do that. But whoever gets in there, if it's not him, is going to be also horrible and maybe not as obviously assailable like a cartoon character.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. And, you kind of hit upon this earlier. You're talking about Russ Vought, right? Who they're going to bring in for OMB. He was in OMB in the last administration. Towards the end, after Mick Mulvaney left, he became the acting OMB. And he's also the author of the executive branch portion of Project 2025. And he also wrote, and apparently it's a secret document that people haven't seen, about the plan for the first 180 days, which was also part of Project 2025. He is the type of person who, you're talking about Elon Musk, and, he and Vivek Ramaswamy have this commission. It's called Doge. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Doge?
but I'm not saying that because that's just a way for Elon Musk to advertise his coin.
It's the dumbest crap ever. We should not indulge it. Agreed.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. But Russ Vought said this week, as that people are starting to talk to him, and I've been writing about him for a long time because he fascinates me, because he's a very different kind of MAGA guy. He's not a MAGA guy. He is pre-MAGA, and he is basically, a full-fledged fascist, I mean, that's what he is. And he is the modern incarnation of the original conservative movement. And these ideas that are floating up through Project 2025 didn't start with Donald Trump. They started a long time ago with people in the far right.
This is a Republican Party.
This is their thing. This is
it's the Republican Party.
This
I don't
is
like
them. Yeah.
I'm gonna ban MAGA from here. Like there should have never been any splitting Donald Trump off from the Republican Party.
This is who they are. And this guy is the embodiment of that because he's been part of this. He was a bureaucrat for years. He worked with the Republican study group in the House. He was part of the Freedom Caucus. He is a numbers cruncher and a guy who has a very, very strong sense. He's also a Christian nationalist. I mean, big time, with big, big plans and plots to enact his Christian nationalist agenda. He is also extremely competent. He knows how to do things. He's not Musk and Ramaswamy having their podcast about Doge or whatever it is they're doing. This guy says, he goes, well, I'm going to be working closely with Ramaswamy and Musk. That's not true. Vought is going to be actually running that. He's going to be the guy who is running the Schedule F, the one where they're going to fire all the federal employees. That part of the agenda, this thing that's happening, you've got Hegseth and you've got Gaetz and you've got Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. They're going to be on TV and we're all going to be talking about them and we're going to be up in arms by everything that they're doing because it's just so crazy. They're putting rapists in charge of everything. Oh my God. And it is horrible. And we're legitimately appalled by that. But underneath it, you've got the Russ votes, and there are a whole bunch of them. And they are people who actually have a plan. Donald Trump, like I said, doesn't give a damn about any of that. That's his, sure, he wants to punish people in the government and fire anybody who doesn't love him. But that's about it. He doesn't have to think any further than that. He's not trying to really disassemble the administrative state or whatever, that Bannon, trope is. He just wants vengeance. He wants revenge on the people that didn't treat him well and want to get them out of there. These guys are serious. They are serious, have serious plans. Now, whether they can pull it all off, I'm not saying that they're geniuses or that they're, omnipotent in any way, but they are serious about what they're doing. They're not, this isn't all for show. It's not something where they want to get on TV. I mean, Russ Vought doesn't do TV. No. He's not a TV guy. He's doing this thing. So people need to keep an eye on that. That's why, okay, it's great to get rid of Gaetz, and if we get rid of RFK Jr.'s completely out to lunch, and Gabbard and Hegseth, you can get rid of all of them, and it would make me happy because it would make Trump unhappy to lose all those people, and that is something that I really enjoy. However, he will replace them with people who are probably more competent than those people, and even if they aren't, there's this whole layer of people underneath that are dead set. And that's, Sam, that's the Republican Party, as you say. These are the same people. This is Heritage Foundation, for God's sake. They've been doing this stuff since the 80s.
Yes.
Nothing new under the sun there.
I vacillate. I mean, I want Trump to have a loss. I think that's helpful in terms of, like, at least in the short term, curbing what he can do. But on the other hand, like, they're going to get people in who are going to draw less attention to what they're doing. They already have the middle management, or upper management, not the show horses, all lined up. They have their resumes. They know where they're going. This isn't going to be a situation where Jared Kushner walks in and goes, who of these people stay and who goes? And like, what? They all go? Like they are ready to go out the gate, and they don't have to be geniuses. They just have to be middling, because what they're doing has the benchmarks are just, it's not achievement that they're looking for. In many respects, it's just like
destruction.
It's destruction. And when you're doing demo, like, you can do it in a way that maybe somebody gets hurt or doesn't get hurt, or dust goes all over the place. But the fact of the matter is, one way or another, this stuff is coming down. Yeah. And so you don't need to be, you don't need to have a skilled trade to do demo in these instances, particularly if you don't care about the side effects. Like, the side effects are just, completely irrelevant. Maybe you monetize them. I'm going to sell dust filters, just to stretch this out. And so I vacillate. I don't want to invest too much in, these people not getting confirmed, because it's much easier to point to, a Pete Hegseth and say, this is what's going on in the military, as opposed to, John Doe, who's going to do the exact same thing, but nobody knows who he is.
Right.
It's much easier to go like Dr. Oz is cutting Medicaid because there's a whole, sort of like already ready media packet for that John Fetterman, back when he cared about this stuff, had prepared essentially. RFK, not hard to paint as a complete, frankly, both lunatic and grifter. Maybe Emma will play some footage from Ring of Fire, which I had forgotten about. That's out there now with Matt Taibbi, of all people, talking about how Trump builds his little fascist army. And that, like in the type of media environment we're in, sometimes it's like, I want that shiny object at the top of these things, because that becomes sort of the way that these stories are told, as opposed to like
a good point. That's
Rex
a good point,
Tillerson or whomever, who's going to be horrible about this. So I'm a little bit torn in that respect, but because I'm genuinely worried. I think they know that they've got 2 years to do this, and they're not going to stop. They've got backup plans and all of this. I'm worried about that.
Yeah, well, that's the 180 days, plan by Russ Vought. That's they wanted to hit the ground running as fast as possible. And I don't think Trump is really bought in. I mean, he's bought in on it to the extent that, let's get going and do all these things. Like,
Whatever.
I'll be a
Where's my
dictator
money?
for one day. Yeah, exactly.
Where's my money? Can I
money?
still sell guitars?
And apparently he can. He is totally planning to do anything. I mean, just think about the fact that the corruption side of this is completely off the table. Nobody's even talking about it. It's totally fine that they are all going to be grifting through, that he will be selling guitars out of the Oval Office, and that will be fine. No one will say
sell watches
a word
in the Oval Office, it's an official act.
It is. And I have immunity. Okay. I have immunity, as everyone knows.
Remember Drain the Swamp?
Yeah. Well, that's what they, that used to be, it never applied to him, obviously.
That's what's on the blazoned on the watch, right underneath. Right. It says Drain the Swamp.
It does. And on the guitar, which, by the way, he's signing the guitar like he's, Eddie Van Halen or something. It's hilarious.
I'd like to see him try to play the guitar. That would be to do anything that would require practice or skill that isn't golf, which he cheats at, might be a difficult task for him.
I mean, I totally agree with you that this is, there's a whole, what they're capable of achieving in 2 years worth by taking this wrecking ball, that these people have been, look, this isn't new to us, Sam. I mean, we were talking about this stuff back in the Bush administration. A lot of this destruction, the unitary executive, do you remember? I mean, that was, the big thing. And they wanted to always get rid of all the federal employees and break the federal employees unions and, get rid of the Department of Education. People are acting like that's a new thing. They've been saying that since the Department of Education was created, that they wanted to get rid of it. So a lot of these are just long-held plans on the part of what used to be the conservative movement, and coming out of the think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, and they're actually going to try and implement these things. And the only thing I can think of, I mean, I worry about the Russ votes, and I worry about the fact that we're all, I don't know, there's just so much, and it's such this flooding the zone concept is really powerful, and it really does work for them. On the other hand, recall, and you guys will remember this, when they went into Baghdad, right? The Bush administration went into Baghdad, and they were going to create a country from this ground up, right? They were going to create a democracy from the ground up, and this was their big plan. They went in there and they created the green zone in there, where they sent in, what was that guy's name? I can't remember. I mean, he had desert boots. Bremer, they sent him in. He was the viceroy, and they were gonna, they were gonna start they were gonna do a stock market.
But that's okay.
It was a prefect. Okay. They were going to do create a stock market from the ground up. They were going to rebuild the whole thing, and they were going to create this perfect democratic oasis in the middle of Iraq. Well, as it turns out, I don't know if you remember a movie called Adventures in the Imperial Life in the Emerald City was the name of it. It was a really excellent book. I thought they should make a musical out of it. It was about these people they sent in there, and they all came from the Heritage Foundation. As we found out later, it was a bunch of young people, mostly under the age of 25, that they sent in. They sent in some 22-year-old to go and create the stock market from the ground up. And they got their resumes from the Heritage Foundation. And they just sent them in there. And of course, we all know what happened, which was the entire thing collapsed. The entire country collapsed. And we ended up in there for, a decade. And the whole thing was a miserable failure. The one thing I wonder is, this is a Heritage Foundation baby. I'm wondering if we're going to have a little bit of that imperial life in the Emerald City. Let's face it, these guys, like you said, they don't have to be geniuses. But
that's the problem, is that, like, yes, they were deluded, they overshot, they thought they could create some type of like free market, a Milton Friedman paradise.
Yeah.
They failed miserably, but the costs were borne by a million people who died there.
Yeah.
The costs were borne in the trillions for this country. Thousands of military personnel.
Yeah. And they did do the destruction part.
And the destruction part. And that's the thing, is that they don't have to, they're not here to build. They're here to tear down. And like I say, gravity is their friend in this case. This
isn't PNAC trying to build democracies, right? These people don't care about democracies. This is Heritage Foundation and the rest of this whole, crew wanting to just wreck the government and leave it a smoldering ruin.
We are out of time, and probably helpfully, because the next question is, what do we do about it? And we're going to give you a couple more weeks to figure it out.
Oh, thank you.
And so
homework assignment.
I'll have it done. Don't worry. I'll get right on that.
You got a couple more weeks to work that out, because really, I feel like in the 20 years that I've been doing this, I have less of a sense of where the light is at the end of the tunnel. There isn't, I don't think this ends in 4 years. And I don't know, I think we'll have elections in 4 years. I'm not necessarily one of those people who don't think we will, but I think that the context of those elections may be seriously disadvantaged for anybody who wants to, even if there's like real pain and hardship that comes from this. Attorney
General Pam Bondi and what that administration could do to voting on a federal level is very concerning.
There was a record number of requests to start unions last year, in like 50 years. Like it was like, 3,500. And, if that spirit can be maintained without the sort of the ability to get those requests made, then, I think we have hope, right? I mean, like there's going to be organizing, and, I think there's going to be a much better chance for Sean Fain's 2028 general strike in May than, maybe otherwise, or maybe less. We'll see. But
exactly.
I worry about the next 2 years, for that matter. But like I say, Digby, you've got at least a couple of weeks more before we will require a solution. So
all right. I'm on it.
People can check out and see if Heather writes about it at salon.com or at Hullabaloo before she gets back. Thanks so much for your time, Digby. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Heather.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.